Hey YouTube, how you doing? This is Iron again. Coming to you. I talk about another issue. But first, please like, share, comment, and subscribe if you like what I'm saying. Today, I'm going to talk about living in a fantasy, and I'm going to be talking about leaders and us living in a fantasy, because there are a lot of leaders who sometimes they live in a fantasy and they want us to live in the fantasy, because they say things that cannot be done, and it's fictitious and it's only in their head. And I'm also going to be talking about business leaders living in fantasy, because businesses are using robots and all they're doing is adding and not subtracting. That's why we got new math, because they're trying to make something out of nothing. And that's where we are. First, leaders. Do you know a lot of leaders live in a fantasy? A lot of stuff. That's why we're in the wars. We're in a never-ending war. That's what Afghanistan is a never-ending war. They don't want to end it because they live in a fantasy. The people all over, they live in this fantasy like, we could do this. No, you can't. You live in a fantasy if you think you are. If you what is all we got to ask you, what is your goal? And can you accomplish this mission? And if you accomplish the mission, what are you going to do afterwards? Because I look at a lot of things and I've studied, like, first of all, Brexit. Nobody's ever said, it's just the British version of Succession that can't be done. Boris Johnson has in his head that it can be. It can't. Because what he thinks is England can stand alone. It can't. It needs help. We need to work together. This is a problem that we all have. Climate change is a problem that we all have. And so, Brexit, no. You need to get out of it. Because if you put Brexit and Succession side by side, it's the same thing. Over and over again. And Boris Johnson has no idea how to do it. And because it can't be done. There's a lot of leaders, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, all of them. If they're in a war, guess what? You're in a never-ending war because you have no ideas. You have none. And you figure, well, we're going to make money if we go to war. No. You're just killing people. That's all you're doing. And lying to them that's of a new way. You don't even know what the new way is. And if you accomplish anything, you're not going to be able to run it because all you know is war. That's all you know. So let's get out of living in that fantasy and start telling the leaders, God, you're living in a fantasy. This can't be done. And that's what a lot of things, the why they keep living in a fantasy is because they got people around them that say we can, and no, we can't. I'm sorry, no, we can't. This cannot be done. Boris Johnson is living in that fantasy. Donald Trump is living in that fantasy. That's why he's trying to put up a wall. When I went to school, they told us to build bridges, not walls. Let people come in, not keep everybody out. And that's what he's doing. And he got people that live in that fantasy with him. This can be done, this can be done. No, it can't. It cannot be done. You're living in a fantasy world. And you're trying to bring us into that fantasy. A lot of leaders, they live in a fantasy. What they perceive that they want to be and not what it is. And they keep on trying and trying, and it's like, get out of that fantasy. And nobody wants to help. Get out of that fantasy. We cannot do this alone. Now, I'm done talking about business leaders and robotics and artificial intelligence. They should not be doing jobs because we're hurting ourselves and they are hurting themselves. Because think about it. They say that robotics and AI and computers have taken 5 million jobs. No, it's actually taken 20 or 30 million jobs. Because add up yourself what you buy. You're buying a home, you're buying a car, you're buying food, you're buying clothing, you're buying electricity. Does AI or robotics or computers buy any of that? They consume it if you buy it for them. But do they buy it themselves? They got the job. Do they spend their money on anything? The money that the company spends to buy that AI, it breaks the 4 laws of money constantly. Constantly. That's why they came up with new math. There's nothing new. What is new about 1 plus 1 is going to be 2? 2 plus 2 is going to be 4. 4 plus 4 is going to be 8. Nothing new about it. Nothing new about that. I don't care what you say. Did they come up with a new number? What? They put that equation on TV. 8 divided by 2, and then the 2 plus 2 in actually, I don't know, it was 4. And you know what they did not put on there? Equal signs. There was no equal sign anywhere. Because it's not 1 or 16. When you have an equal sign, numbers are what they are. That's it. It's not either or. That's it. That's what numbers do. When they add up, 8 divided by 2 is 4. Equals 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's it. They had 2 equations that do not go together, and they didn't have equal signs. Okay? So that's how they're getting people, saying that we have a lot of money. They don't. They do not. They live in a fantasy. Using a robot or artificial intelligence or a computer to do a job, you're living in a fantasy if you think you're making money, because you're not. Because what you are doing is you're getting rid of your base. And what do you need to stand on? Your base. If you're getting rid of it, you're not, all of it's going to collapse. And that's what we're doing. We're collapsing because we don't know what we're doing. And somebody threw something out there and said, hey, let's try the throwing stuff. You're so bombarded with information, they make it to where you can't think. The leaders make it to where you can't think about, oh, he actually doesn't know what he's doing. They actually don't know what they're doing. Because, and this is the biggest misconception about people being rich. All his money was borrowed. What? All his money was borrowed? So wasn't he, I thought he was rich. No, all that was borrowed money. Wait a minute, so he was not rich because he got a big ass bill when he died. He just ain't got to pay it because he did. But guess what? It can't transfer it to nobody because guess what? The banks and everybody, they want their money. It was all borrowed. And then how was he rich? Well, I guess he had good credit. That's all it sounded to me. He had good credit. Guys, we need to stop living in fantasies. And stop saying we can do this and we can't. And then the leaders start talking stupidly. And we say, oh, he's just old. They are old. And they're old and out of date. And a lot of the concepts that they are thinking about that work, that could have, actually they didn't work in the 19th century. It's damn sure not going to work in the 21st century. We have been led to believe that the fantasies can work. They can't. They want us, the people, and I know you think, to live in fantasy. We don't need to live in fantasy anymore. So stop living in the fantasy and start realizing that, hey, that is not a good idea. You're not a good, matter of fact, you're not a good leader. You shouldn't even been up there. But you're up there, but we need to get you out. Donald Trump, not a good leader. Vladimir Putin, not a good leader. Boris Johnson, not a good leader. We have a lot of not good leaders. We have a lot of not of good leaders. And they're going to get us killed. Because they're not good leaders. They basically, if we was in a paper bag, they couldn't even lead us out of it. And that's what some of them are trying to do, is put us back in a paper bag. Not do nothing. Not achieve not anything. Because we can't achieve it. We can't believe it. We can't do it. We just got to have somebody say, hey, that's a dumb idea. We have to say, if you take a job from a person and give it to a computer, are you going to make money? Because the computer is not spending any money. Well, yeah, I think you keep adding, not subtracting, which is what you need to do. Is what is needed to be done. Well, new math, no such thing as new math. New math is, I don't know, fantasy. When we are having to delete everything to try to get this out, and guess what? It doesn't work. It's not working. None of this is working. Because guess what? They can play with the numbers. They play with them. And now they're trying to say, you believe in what we're doing. And you see every day that they try to advertise and throw a sale every way because they're trying to sell this crap. Because they've gotten themselves into a bind. And they do not know how to get out of it except merging. Because of basic stupidity. And they try to put on, that was basic math. No, it wasn't. That was basic stupidity. They want us to live in the fantasy. The politicians, the leaders, the business leaders, all of them, they want us to live in that fantasy. And we are trying to take it out. Because guess what? We have thinkers out there. We do. And we have people out there saying, no, I'm not accepting that. Please, don't accept the fantasy. Don't live in the fantasy. Stop living in the fantasy. And start saying, that can't be done. And you need to get out. Because there's a lot of politicians who have been up there for years. They've been up there for years. And they're still living in the fantasy. When Donald Trump came down that escalator, he was wanting us to live in his fantasy. And that's what he puts out all the time. Boris Johnson, he wants Britain to live in his fantasy. And that's what he puts out. Stop living in the fantasy. Okay, please comment or like and share.